Welcome to Pause for the Truth, where you can sit back, relax, and hear an honest dialogue about health, wealth, legal, and social issues. The hosts are Dr. Rogers Kane, family practice physician, and Jocelyn Turner, health education consultant, with co hosts from the Northeast Florida Medical Society and its foundation. Stay tuned for the truth about matters affecting you and your family. We're here to tell you what's really going on and why. Good evening and welcome to Pause for the Truth. I am your co host, Jocelyn Turner. So nice to be here tonight. It was an absolutely stunning day here in Northeast Florida. The weird part about it is that it was in the 80s, and the 80s shouldn't typically happen in November, the end of November, by the way. And to have 80s for Thanksgiving Day, what in the heebie jeebies, Tyrone, is going on?
Hey, Donald Trump's president. All that comes with it.
Oh, is that what it is? He's not president yet. He's president elect.
President elect. Okay.
No, I say that it's climate change, but that's another whole podcast topic. But anyway, you will notice to our usual viewers before we introduce our guests, you will notice that Dr. Rogers Kane is not on tonight. Yes, unfortunately, the doctor goes under the weather occasionally. And I must admit that I've missed more than Dr. Kane, so it's very unusual that he's not on. However, he is so wonderful that he asked, probably didn't have to ask, his good buddy, Dr. Kenneth Jones, decide to step in and pinch hit for Dr. Kane. How are you doing this evening, Dr. Jones?
I'm well. Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Welcome and thank you. And so tonight we have a very distinguished panel of guests. I don't know where we're getting
that's what it is. He's not president.
the side conversation from Tyrone. Do you know where that's happening from?
Yeah, I got it taken care of.
Okay, thank you. So tonight we're having I think a very interesting conversation. If you've joined us the past couple of weeks since November 5th, the election day, we've had a couple of interesting conversations about the election results, asking groups of individuals just how do they feel about it? I mean, how do you think it affects you moving forward, or will affect the community in which you are a part of? And all of us are a part of some community. I've been a part of conversations where the community means different things to different people. Some people consider the community where they live. Other people feel that their part of their community are if I'm a woman, then as a woman, that's my community. As a single woman, that's my community. As a Black woman, that's my community. So community means different things for different people. But tonight, the community that we've invited to join us are, drum roll, young adults. So for those of us who are not young, we're young at heart. But for those of us who are not young, we're going to engage in a conversation with our young adult guests tonight on the topic of, how can I forget, because I came up with the topic, the future is ours. Young adults reflect on the election's impact on their lives and values. So I'm going to start by first asking our guests to introduce themselves and just say whatever you would like to share with our audience about yourself. You don't have to say anything other than your name if that's all you want to share. And I am going to start with ladies first because that's what I do. Amara Gonzalez, I am going to start with you.
Hi, everyone. I am Myra, and I am a senior at one of the largest public universities here in Northeast Florida, and I am ready to graduate in the next 3 weeks. And I also represent, or something I see as a community that I represent with, is being a Hispanic woman, being an immigrant, and being a queer person as well. All comes with a lot of different things and different communities that you see individually and also something collectively. So that's something that I've been reflecting on the past 2 weeks since the election results have been announced. So yeah.
Thank you. So you really, when I talked about the community, being a part of the community, it means different things. So you just said different parts of the community, which you're a part of, the UNF community, Hispanic community. I mean, it's just so many different things. And that's what people need to really hone in on that. It's not, and I wish that people would have thought about that, Myra, when they chose who they voted for. It's not just about just you individually. It's about the collective communities that you are a part of. Also introducing this evening, joining us is Xenia Blunt. And Xenia, you can, and if I'm botching up your name, please correct me.
Yes, correct her, please.
No, you said it right. It's Xenia Blunt. Hi. I don't know if I really consider myself one of the young folks because I am middle-aged. So, but I do have younger children who are probably around, I'm sorry, Myra's age. Is it? Yeah, sorry. So yeah, but I work in healthcare. I have two, what are y'all? Gen Z? They're Gen Z. I think they're Gen Z. Two Gen Z kids. And the communities I consider myself a part of are African American community, healthcare community, mostly women, feminist community. So, and parents.
All right. Well, welcome. Thank you. And also joining us tonight is Nicholas. I just met Nicholas tonight for the first time, as well as Myra. Welcome, Nicholas. Tell our audience a little bit about yourself.
Hello, my name's some of you may know me as Raheem, but I do go by Nicholas officially. I am a 30-year-old Black male here in the state of Florida. I am also a part of the LGB community. I also worked in healthcare, and I'm just here to be a part of the conversation. I've always wanted to do something like this. I love watching them, so I figure why not be a part of it. Also, a certain person sent me an invite, so if y'all don't like me, that's their fault. Just
so
saying.
It sounds like one of those voluntold, not volunteered, right? You're a voluntold, Nicholas.
Yeah. I owe him a couple favors. So I'm trying to, get the books cleaned up.
So, do you prefer to be referred to as Nicholas or Raheem?
It doesn't matter to me. Whatever is easier to remember.
Okay, thank you. I'm glad you said that because I might not remember Raheem, so it wouldn't be any disrespect. And last but certainly not least, this young man who I've had the pleasure of being around a few times and that has some real good opinions about things. I've had some interesting conversations with Randall Jackson. How are you doing, Randall?
I'm doing awesome. I'm doing really good. How you guys doing tonight?
Doing good. You want to tell our audience a little bit about yourself before we get into the discussion?
I'm Randall Jackson, Tyrone Jackson's son, 30-year-old Black male. I definitely only identify in the Black community, but listen to everybody else. I'm in the IT community. I'm in the parenting community. I'm in the millennial community. I guess there's a lot of communities that we're all a part of, but right now I'm only participating in the Black community.
All right. And that is absolutely wonderful. So
I forgot to introduce this one.
Micah.
Here.
I'm sorry, yeah. Micah. Micah, tell our audience a little bit about yourself.
Hi, I'm Micah. I'm 19. I'm a biophysics major at ASU. I'm also a scribe at Baptist Health. So I'm part of the Black community and the queer community, the disabled community, a lot of different communities. Yeah.
All right. Well, welcome, Micah. So let's just dive into it. And Dr. Jones,
did you miss Dr. Jones? He had stepped away. Did you give him a? Did I miss that?
Can you see me?
Yes.
Okay. Just to introduce myself to the young people. My name is Kenneth Jones. I'm a surgeon. Did all my training in New York, then moved to Jacksonville, started the kidney transplant program. And now I work with Ascension doing general surgery. So I'm one of the most seniors. I have 3 kids. One is a dermatologist, one is a banker, and one's finishing at University of Florida.
Go
So
Gators.
that's what I have.
Go Gators. Well, welcome, Dr. Jones, and everyone else. And our behind the scenes guy decided to stay up front today because this is also a topic that he's been passionate about. So let's go ahead and dive into the conversation. I'm going to start with simply asking, what emotions did the election results bring up for you? Who wants to start with that question? What emotions did the election results bring up? Raheem, I'm calling you Raheem because that looked like a Raheem smile right then. That didn't look like a Nicholas.
So election night for me, I just went to bed because I felt very confident in the person who I wanted to lead the country would win. And I woke up not surprised. So I guess, I wasn't surprised. And if anything, maybe slightly relieved. But yeah, I was like, yeah, that about lines up to what I was expecting.
So when you say relieved, you're relieved that it was finally over because of the anxiety leading up to it, or where did the relief come from?
The relief that Donald Trump won. That's where my relief came from.
Okay.
So.
Alrighty. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else? What emotions did the election results bring up for you?
It was crazy. It was just straight crazy. I felt a little crazy. Everything was crazy, leading up to the election. And then it was just so much momentum behind Kamala. I had seen such, I won't say unprecedented levels, but such high levels of organization coming together. I mean, they said that they had a call of white women with 50,000 white women on there pledging millions of dollars. So I'm just like, oh, that's a wrap. Taylor Swift endorsed her and everything. Every person Taylor Swift endorsed has won up until this year. So I was just like, it's in the bag. So it was crazy that even with all of that, we couldn't cross the finish line. So it just felt crazy. I felt crazy. It was everything was crazy.
Okay.
I have a question. Why do you guys think about 20 million Democrats did not go to the polls? Anybody take that?
I don't.
Multi-dimensional answer, but I'll let someone take it.
I don't really think they were motivated. Part of that is because when we're talking about young people, I think there is a lack of like people care about them in general. You look at what we've done to the environment and refuse to fix for them. You look at the school system, we failed them on multiple levels. When it comes to gun violence, that's one. Just the mere fact that our literacy rate is declining at such a drastic rate. We failed them in healthcare, especially our young Black kids. I feel like we've failed them a lot. And so there was no real motivation to get out and vote Democrat.
In my opinion, now the person who said they were relieved because the person they wanted to win, what about that person's background that made you want that person to win?
One, they already had 4 years of experience. Our country has already seen 4 years of Donald Trump. So when people were comparing him to one of the most genocidal maniacs that has ever existed, was to me absolutely absurd. I did not understand that. Two, the other reason why I was relieved is that the amount of what I would describe as nonsense that has been going on the last few years with the immigration, the war in Ukraine, this issue with Lebanon and giving money to other people, other countries and things like that, just this absolute thing, the things where you hear about that's your country is funding when you know well enough your own home has a bunch of issues we could be resolving, and here we are focusing on things that are, I'm not going to say they're not important, but they're not important enough to ignore the problems we have on our own soil. And it just seems very foolish, childish, irresponsible to, write these quote unquote checks, if you will, to pay attention to this very small minority of people who feel like they're one thing and that they're not, when we have people who are trying to come into the country legally. You have people who genuinely need healthcare but that money that could be used for them is going to fund a war that we should have no part in. So when you hear someone with the background of Donald Trump, where he's coming in with this no nonsense attitude, and because you've had him before, he's going to come in and do what he wants to do, that brings that brings relief, at least to someone like me, to where, okay, somebody's going to take control of this nonsense. Someone's going to cut out all this BS, if you will, and get a handle on things. Someone's going to put the American people first. And that's,
so do you feel that America should eliminate foreign monies to any country? We should stop giving money to foreign countries to help develop them and develop and use all that money in the United States. Is that what you're basically saying?
I am saying that I think it's more important we take care of ourselves first, that we make sure our cup runneth over first. And then if we have something left over, I think we should absolutely give more to other places. We can't pour from an empty cup. We can't pour from a cup that has holes in it. So
do you know which
the answer to your question is
the largest amount of U.S. aid?
I'm sorry?
Which country gets the largest amount of U.S. aid?
If it's not America, I don't know.
Okay. The largest amount of foreign aid goes to Israel. U.S.
I don't know anything about Israel.
Yeah.
Okay. To be very blunt, when this Israel conversation comes up, the first thing that comes to my mind, and this might sound harsh, I don't care. I don't live in Israel. The people I know and love and that I care about don't live over there. I'm not saying what they go through is not horrible or tragic or inhumane, but I'm saying that my impact is only so big. My reach can only go so far. I can't care about people who I've never seen somewhere across the water, when I know there's a neighbor down the street who I walk past every day that I can also give that same amount of effort and care and resources to, and that's a neighbor. That's just how I see it. I can't stress enough. It's not that they don't deserve that resource, that care, that love, that protection. It's just that
America
I cannot
give it
justify.
To them.
I'm sorry, what?
Because America shouldn't give it to them.
So
no, I just think that we should take care of our people first. Oh,
they need help, but America don't help them though. We shouldn't help them, but you recognize that they need help.
No, we recognize they need help, but what? I can't help you if I can't help myself. But I cannot give you food if I don't have food.
America has more food than anybody else in the country. I mean, in the world.
But it's an example, though, is what I'm saying. The metaphorically, again, I cannot pour from a cup that's not really. If it has anything in it, I only can pour so much, and then I'm going to be out of it as well. You know what I'm saying? So I want to help everybody, but I can't help everybody.
I think part of the problem, though, with that is that America has always put itself first. Like, we continue to put ourselves first, because when we are talking about Israel, who is supplying Israel with its weaponry? Who supplies?
I have no idea. I don't know.
It's the U.S. So we
We should
supply
stop doing that.
exactly. And if we stop doing that, if places like the United States, the Western world, stop doing that, we wouldn't have war because they wouldn't have access to the weapons that they currently have.
I
They'll
don't
get
think
them from
that's true.
somewhere. They'll get them
Yeah,
from
I don't think
somewhere
that's true.
else.
War,
They'll get them
war
from
will
somewhere
always be
else.
a part of human experience, any way you slice
Right.
it.
I agree.
Very true.
I want to give Myra a chance to answer the question. You hadn't chimed in on what emotions did the election results bring up to you?
I was not surprised. I can understand a lot of people's frustrations in not seeing process in America. As someone who is currently going through naturalization myself at 25, I understand the feeling of wanting to put America first. I completely understand. I lived in this country for 20 years. I want to be an American too. Like, I understand, America is this huge, giant, as much as people like hate to admit it, it's a giant influence on how world politics works. And so I understand people feeling the need, like, we need to put this country ahead of other issues at hand. And so I think that leads into a different discussion on what is your priority? What is something you view in your life as your priority? Do you view, foreign affairs as a priority? Do you view at home, like domestic affairs, as a priority? One of the biggest things I go through every day at my job is homelessness. Homelessness every single day is a huge prominent issue that happens in Jacksonville specifically. And like, how does that affect you? And does that not make you want your country to be doing better for its people? Like, another thing we talked about was like literacy rates. They've gone down completely. Education in America is failing the younger generation, which is so, so sad. As someone who grew up with public schools, I can't imagine other people not feeling the same way that I do. And so I completely understand this idea of help yourself before you help others.
So does everyone here feel that education, the way it is now, went down in the last 4 years? Or is this a
Last 10.
process that's been going on for the last 40 years?
Yep, 40.
Since desegregation, when Black people stopped teaching Black people.
It's been
You
a
hit it.
slow decline. And I think it was definitely happening while I was still in grade school. But within the last 4 years after COVID, the kids don't seem to be learning much. I now tutor a kid in math, and he's in advanced math, and it doesn't feel like he understands like really basic things like multiplication and division, addition, fractions. And I'm seeing it with a lot of different kids. Not just kids who, of course, it's understandable when kids are new to the country that they aren't going to get some things. But even with kids that are from here, some of them don't know how to read, don't know how to write, don't know
Well,
basic.
do we blame their parents or do we blame the schools that their parents are sending them to every day?
I 100% blame those
Or the
schools
government.
and the government. I don't think it's the fault of the teachers. Teachers have limited ability they now have a limited ability to control the education system. But right now, the position that teachers and students are being put in, one, students are getting more violent because they're basically unable to control their environment right now. And that's what teachers are seeing. Students are more emboldened to do violent acts, like getting into fights. We all know the 6-year-old that shot his teacher. Like, it's getting more common to see stuff like that. But it's not because kids, the new generation in general, Gen Alpha, is more violent inherently. And I don't think it's because of the teachers, and I don't think it's because of the parents. I think it's because of the government and the school system, and the fact that as the events that we've seen over the past 4 years, especially with COVID, a lot of these kids saw their family members die, with all the stuff that they can see online from the wars that are going on, school shootings, and the fact that at school it simply seems that people don't care about them. They're having mental health issues, and it's getting worse. And it's also affecting their education, which is already bad. So
Yeah,
does
and
this group feel
I understand that. And let me say this here. I think I like the fact
Is
that
this
you
a
say that.
question?
No, I want to kind of comment on what you just said, because I think it's really important that we understand when you say it's the system in terms of the schools and the
government?
the government,
Right.
who chooses those entities. For too long, as African Americans, we've sat back as parents and did not participate. When it came to the point where every student wins, we said nothing. When it came to the point where teachers lost their right to be able to control the curriculum that they taught, we said nothing. We continued to say nothing while these things were changing. And then now we get to this point and we're surprised that they changed.
That's what I was gonna pose that to a question that a lot of, we're talking about the national election. However, there are a lot of local decisions that are being made at the local level. And I've been involved in schools where educators are begging parents to attend PTA meetings and trying to be engaged in their schools activities, and they're not just sending your children to school for us to educate, but we're all a part of this together. If you're just joining us, we're having a conversation with some young adults talking about the future is ours. Young adults reflect on the election's impact on their lives and values. If you have some questions or comments, please chime in. Tell us what you're thinking about this topic. And, Dr. Jones, I think you had a question. Did you have a question to ask?
No, my question was, I'm hearing the government, I'm hearing, how do you think that we should manage, and this is from the people your age group, how should we manage all these kids with behavioral problems? Because I'm hearing that we're having behavioral problems in school. Who is responsible for the behavior that a kid has in school? The school, the government, the city, or the parent?
I believe that, well, it's a combination of all of those things, but when it's such a widespread issue like what we're seeing now, like when I'm working at the ER, there are an incredible amount of kids that come in with suicidal ideations and depression, anxiety, all types of stuff. And at that point, you have to start thinking about it being a systemic issue. And so it is not just on the parents to be trying to help. Of course, they need to try to help their kids. But we also have to understand that the reason that Black parents, especially, cannot be super engaged with the school system is because they're working and they have to work. And I think that, especially for Black kids, that's also part of the problem, is that we're seeing our parents work themselves to death. And it becomes such a huge issue that you see behavioral issues popping out. And then with white kids, even though they don't have to experience that, there's still the environment that we're now living in, where you're seeing your planet dying, you're seeing people dying online, you're being afraid to go to school, being taught how to defend yourself in case someone decides to kill you at school. Seeing all that stuff will still affect you mentally, and it is now the job of the government to come up with policies that makes the school system better in America as a whole, because this isn't just a county problem at this point. This is a country problem. And I think part of the issues with the school system is the fact that we refuse to centralize it in any way. So we now have pockets of people deciding, oh, we don't have to give them our kids this kind of education, like in Florida and Texas deciding not to teach important Black history or Native history.
I would like to chime in there, but they didn't decide. People voted. So the people of Florida and Texas decided, not just the elected government official.
I would like to say that I do believe that the people have an important role in it. However, one important thing, sorry about my dogs. One important thing to realize about voting is that Black people and the people of Florida in general have not been empowered to vote. Not just from, oh, we aren't campaigning enough or whatever. It's also that we're making it harder to vote on purpose. So the people who really want to vote against some of these policies can't. They
How
can't
so?
get out to vote.
How so?
Redlining, in Florida, a lot of the times they are moving voting places out of the way for a lot of people.
Gerrymandering. Yes.
Yeah, gerrymandering. It's also the prison system in Jacksonville. I've been in Jacksonville's jails. They are filled with Black people. And in Florida, you cannot vote if you are a felon. You cannot vote
That's not
if you're
true.
in jail.
That's not true.
You have to campaign in order to be able to vote as a felon.
Florida law says as long as all your fees are paid and your sentence is served, you can vote. Look it
But
up.
how
I want to bring this back to the election, though, because the points that you all are making, I think the biggest question for me is, did any of these things that matter to you influence your decision of who you chose to vote for, not just the national election, but also the local elections and the state election? Because nationally, a lot of folks are saying, let's leave it up to the states. Well, if the states don't align with your values and your interests or those things you think are important, because the only time you get out and vote is national elections, so you didn't have any influence on those local or statewide positions that are making the decisions that are closer to home for you. Do you know what I'm saying?
Just a comment that there is the big decision in the incoming administration to eliminate the Department of Education that sets national policy and leave it up to the states. Could you imagine what the education in Mississippi is going to be like? In Louisiana is going to be like?
it's outrageous.
Non-existent.
And someone mentioned something that I must mention, and I think we could put that as the umbrella to this. If you want to destroy a community, what do? You undereducate its people, specifically the men. You provide them with guns, you provide them with drugs, and you put them in jail, and you have destroyed that community. 16% of the United States population are African Americans. 46% of the people in jails are African American males, but African Americans. So as you can see, what's happening and understanding the history behind that. So with that in mind, what do you think you will benefit from the changes that will happen come January 20th? In what way you think your life will be better or worse or doesn't change?
I think things are going to get a lot more complicated. I definitely foresee prices rising just across the board a little bit more than the natural rate. I just heard on the radio how 10 to 15% on all imports and an extra 10% for Chinese goods when almost everything comes from China. So we're about to see a 15% raise just across the board naturally because Trump has this thing with China. So we're going to definitely see an increase. There's going to be lackadaisical policies. So all of the concerns that we're bringing up today, there's just going to be less checks and balances. There's going to be less people in a position of power who actually care to do something. And ultimately, the general education of the population is going to continue to plummet.
Any other
So,
comments?
if I may, I would just like to say, if it is up to the citizens' responsibilities to be aware of the elections that are happening in your state, county, province, whatever you live, all that information as of current day within the last 10 years is free. You can literally go to any community board, community center, and figure out who's running for what policies they're running on, and whether that, if you want to vote for that or not. If you are in a place where you don't agree with the things that are happening, and I know it may be difficult for some groups of people, but you can move. No one is forcing you, at least in the United States, no one is forcing you to
That's not
stay
true.
where you are. Hmm?
It's not
What?
true. Most people live under the
What?
poverty line, so how can you move? Most people are past
You're,
due on
you're
rent, so how
2
can you
feet,
move?
2 feet, 2 feet, 2 feet.
Move
If
two
you are
feet.
that oppressed, in an area where you know they do not have your values to the forefront, you need to move. Otherwise, you are saying, yes, I don't like it, but it's not that bad for me to physically leave this area that's hurting me.
But explain
But
to me, how
Unless
did I
you are,
move if both my parents are working 3 jobs? I don't go to school because the school sucks and people don't care and people don't even know I'm not going to school.
people are not obligated
How
to
does one
care.
supposed to move? And we're already a family
2
of
feet.
4 living in a 1-bedroom apartment and the lights are just off.
If
We just got them back on. How are we supposed to move? Help me
if it is
understand.
that
There's no government
horrible,
assistance
if it's that bad, why are you staying?
but here's the
because we have
thing
no
I
other
that
don't.
choice.
your
Do you say
question.
that to the people that come across the border that feel the same way about where they are currently?
It's even worse
Well,
across the border. So being able to
so
stay
if
in a
you're
one
coming,
bedroom
so
apartment and lights on, it's
if you are coming across the border, in my opinion, I hope it's legally, because the first thing I'm going to say, you shouldn't be here legally. It's wrong.
But you
nobody
just
is
You
here
are
said if
legally
it's
committing.
though.
so
You're
bad,
committing
you
a.
just but you
You're,
just said if it's so bad that they
Hmm.
should just
mm-hmm,
their 2 feet and
Two
leave.
feet.
mm-hmm.
Yep.
That's all
Yeah,
they
what
need.
2 feet? Yeah,
That's
Okay.
what you just
literally.
said.
So
We as American citizens can do that. We're now changing it to a different situation, to immigration. So if we're citizens in the United States, we have within our power, unless it's Hawaii or Alaska, to physically go to any state in this country. If you are a person who wants to come here and be a citizen and live here because it's a better life, 100%, absolutely do it. I encourage, please come. But you have to do it legally, because if you don't, the second they find out you're here illegally, especially with Donald Trump as president, they're going to say you have to go back to wherever you came from.
Do you
And
even
I
know
would
the
like to
immigration
avoid
process?
that.
But
Do you
here's
know
Huh?
how the
let
immigration
me
process works?
No, no, I don't.
well
I don't know how it
let's
works.
bring into account a couple of things now. So let's take a
Mm-hmm.
look at what you said. A person having the ability to move, to leave, to take their 2 feet, but that does not guarantee any difference where they move from. We're talking about systemic things that are happening from state to state. So the solution to move does not resolve the resounding issue. Your statement was simply, well, move to a place that have values and things that are more in line with yours. Well, suppose there are no places like that, especially within my financial means to move, and then
Then
you
you got to
find
make
yourself
do.
in the same place.
So what do you tell a
You
person
got
whose daughter was just raped by their neighbor and now their 14-year-old daughter is pregnant and they can't get an abortion because 41 states ban abortion? So what state do they
well.
move to? Can you
The,
tell
the,
me?
the first things
Can't, so
first.
you can't.
I'm a man. I'm a man. I can't have a baby, so I don't think my opinion is valid on abortion. So I don't want to speak on that. So that's just me. I feel like that's a conversation between a biological woman and a family physician or a gynecologist. So I
Actually,
can't answer
America
that
rule
question.
that is not a conversation between a biological woman and a physician. It's actually determined by America, as it says so in
As
41
it says
states.
now. I have a question I want to ask you all. How do you view the power of your generation in driving change?
Um, I think that I certainly think that Gen Z has the potential to be powerful in driving change. I just don't think it's the way that older generations want us to drive change. I am a Gen Zer who, this was my first time voting. I voted in the local elections and then I voted nationally. But I know a lot of my friends that absolutely did not want to vote because they felt failed by the system. And when trying to argue about, oh, you need to vote because eventually the system is going to work if we just try hard enough. When they've seen their parents try and fail, it's so hard to get people to try to get out and vote when they don't feel like anything has changed in the past.
That's my point. How do you all think then you can influence that though? I mean, why won't you step up? If you don't like, because that's what I've done historically. I've never been an elected official, but I have not liked everything that the government does. And so what I've done as a baby boomer is that I have volunteered or aligned myself with organizations that matter to me to give my influence at the local and national level. Right? Everything that I do may not change, but I am stepping up, getting outside of my house and even doing this podcast, right? I don't get paid to do this. I volunteer. So whatever your way is, that's what I'm asking. Why don't you do it?
The thing is, we do have our own way. It's just not the way that people want us to do it. It's not through exactly the system that has been in place. But the thing is, when we do things our way, people don't like it. For example, the protests that happened back in 2020 with George Floyd, and then that have now been happening in 2024 with Palestine and the universities here in America. We were told that we need to find other ways to do what we wanted, except we've tried most ways. I go to city council. I campaign there for what I believe in. City council doesn't listen. We went to Tallahassee and went to go try to campaign to Ron DeSantis.
Can you break that down for me? You said you went to city council and they don't listen. What were you asking for from city council? Because I've seen city council do things for people on the spot.
Oh yeah, they will do certain things. However, they refuse to get the liquor store out of that Black neighborhood near a charter school,
Brentwood.
Near Brentwood.
Well, they actually did. It's not a liquor store; it's a restaurant.
They bought the property. He sold the
There's
property.
a liquor store and there's a morgue there. The morgue is still there.
Right,
That's
it's not a
brand
liquor
new.
store.
There's no longer the liquor store.
But the morgue is still there.
The morgue is still there.
Yeah, that's a brand new building, and they're finishing that building right now. So I don't know how they're going to ever move that building.
Yeah,
But-
And by the way,
Back to
Micah,
something you said earlier.
yeah, by the way,
Do you
Micah,
think-
hold on, Dr. Jones. Micah, I want to say to you that is exactly my point. That if folks had paid attention to their local officials, that was from the previous administration, a
Right.
mayor that people reelected to be the mayor of Jacksonville. So that means that the people of Jacksonville felt that individual was doing a great job, that they reelected that person, right? And they allowed that building to be built in that community they usurped all city rules when no community input.
It's an illegal building. Yeah, you can say it's an illegal building.
Right. And now the current administration, just like you said, to your point, the current administration, the current generation, see the parallel there? You're now being blamed or reaping the unfortunate circumstances surrounding a decision that somebody else made, right? So that is the unfortunate part about it. And that's probably a multi-million-dollar building that, quite frankly, that's built in such a way structurally who else could, what other business, if you will, can go into that? So that's the thing that I want people to realize. When we allow these, we continually put these same individuals, we re-elect them to be in our positions. And then, and I've had this conversation, Micah, by the way, with my friends, like, please get outside of your Instagram text messaging and complaining and get out. Don't just you go to city council, invite every, you know how these people get these things changed?
Yeah, but
There are
1,000 people to the city council meeting. They'll invite 1,000 people to the, you see what, whatever your way, I'm just saying, write letters. What you've got to create your way. Back in the day, for me, in my general, anyway, so I'm gonna shut up and let Dr. Jones, I think you had a
I
comment.
just made it. She said that they don't like. Do you think they liked the sit-ins at Woolworths? Do you think they liked what Martin Luther King was doing? Do you think they liked what Malcolm X was doing? Do you think they liked what Stokely Carmichael was doing? I mean, that generation changed things from a segregated society to a,
Integrated.
I would say,
I think part of the
desegregated, not integrated. I think it was desegregated, never truly integrated.
yeah,
Okay.
I think part of the problem though is that these kids are doing that. I've witnessed them doing this. I've been with
Keep
her.
doing it. Keep it.
Right.
Keep
But the
it.
problem is they are told to not continue to do it. They are told from our elders to stop doing what they're doing because it brings too much attention to them. And so it's like you want them to fight and you want them to do these things, and when they do it, you tell, well, not that way. Can't do it that way. You know,
What's the phrase? All skin folk ain't kinfolk. You just gotta identify people who is not playing on the same team, and there's a lot of people not playing on your team.
and
But a part of growing up is identifying
one
a
of the
tribe.
things
I'm
that
not doubting that at all. But I don't think it's also I don't think it's necessarily people who aren't on our team. I think it is also people who believe that if we do it their way, that it'll somehow slow down what is inevitably going to happen anyway.
Then you know what you do, Xenia, what you do. So you don't go protest at the city council meeting. You don't go do a sit-in. But what you can do, and I'm not saying this, I just thought of this, by the way, so it might be stupid, so no judgment. And Myra, you need to chime in. Myra, you haven't said anything lately, but is then you create a social media campaign denouncing those individuals.
Yep.
When it's time for voting, do not vote for X, Y, and Z, and you list the reasons why. And that way, you know, and so you getting them a different way. Do you know what I mean? And that's just a thought that I just had.
well, let me say this here. I think this
They've
generation,
also done that. That's why we were.
hold on, I think this newer generation is in a discovery mode, and they're trying to find out which way it's going to be most effective. Because to their point, if they look at what has been done and consider where they are, they could come to the conclusion that nothing has worked. If you look at where they are today and listen to our generation tell them about all the struggles that were happening, then it's easy for them to come to the conclusion that that doesn't work. So we're in a very peculiar time in history where a generation with the power that they have is looking for a pathway that not only works for them, but that draws in others like them and then have an effect. Believe it or not, the civil rights movement, there were multiple different approaches taken before that did not work. We point to the civil rights movement with Dr. Martin Luther King and all that. But what about the situation that happened? We've been told in school all the time about Rosa Parks. We forget the lady who sat in on the bus before her. So the generation is in a flux and they're trying to find out what works. The challenge I believe they have now is us old folks. We keep telling them what to do, what doesn't work, and we're not supporting anything that they actually attempt to put into. There's
I
no.
think that was Dr. Jones' point, Tyrone. During the civil rights movement, is the same thing, right? People then tried stuff and they got pushback from other people, but they either kept pushing or they stopped spending money. Remember, Dr. Jones, there was a point where people just stopped spending them. Okay, well, I know where I can hurt you. So if we're not showing up at your movie theaters, at your whatever places, so they started hitting people. Here's what we're demanding. If you cannot give us what we want, then guess what? We're not going to show up at your whatever, your Jaguar game. I'm not a Jaguar hater, by the way. I'm just using that as an example. We're not showing up. We're going to start boycotting those things that we know matter to them, right? I'm just using that as an example. You've just got to find, okay, so I know how I can hurt you, right? And I just use the example of you put stuff out saying don't vote for candidate A, you whatever. You just have to keep, and because people did that constantly. And by the way, I have to mention this. So now you know why books are being banned, because folks don't want you to know how folks did it in the past, because they don't want you to bring back those ways. But people, boomers and us older people, we're seeing a rebirth, right? The struggles that you all are going through, Micah, now, we went through those struggles. I tell young people now, I told my colleagues, I said, the reason I bugged you, did you vote? Did you vote? I didn't tell them who to vote for. Vote, just vote, right? Whoever, whatever matters to you. Because I remember as a child walking down the street, felt something on me, and then I turned and I put my hand and looked, and laughing, group of white kids in a car spit on me, right? So I tell people, I remember that. And so I tell people, you got to vote. If you don't want somebody spitting your face or on you, and they spit on you, Michael, when they arrested you, right? Your spit is that way. So if you don't want to see those things happening, you got to keep fighting. And that's why I've never stopped. And
yeah, but those things aren't happening anymore. I think it's unrealistic. No, I think it's unrealistic to compare those times.
I just use it as an example, Tyrone.
But I'm just saying that as an example, that's a poor example.
But no,
it's example because it does not.
Well, it is something that's potentially coming back with this stop and frisk without any recourse, without any evidence. I mean, so you think 16% of Black people being locked up is high now? Wait till that stop and frisk get enacted.
We already,
right.
I don't know. I think with the young folks, we kind of already showed them, or at least the American government has shown them that this two-party system is not working. You know, at least not, and it was never intended really to work for us. But when we look at this last election, nobody chose Kamala during a primary. We were told that was who that was our choice.
Mm-hmm.
So you already, when you have young folks looking like, but I thought that we got a choice in who we voted for. So you're telling me if I don't vote for Kamala or Harris, then I get Trump, nothing else. You've now told these young folks they only have one person they could vote for. And I don't see how we can't see for the young people how that looks for their future. Because they're not.
All I say is you have to keep all I'm suggesting, Tyrone and Xenia, is you have to keep fighting. You just cannot give up. That's all I'm suggesting. Whatever your thing is, it may be hard. It may seem like it will never happen. All I'm suggesting to you is that, and I mentioned this being spit on as an example, because that is what's influenced me to never stop being involved in my community. Right?
Awesome.
That's
I
all
love
I'm
that.
saying.
I love the way you position that.
That's
That
all I'm
incident,
saying.
but
It
that
has made me
incident had a motivating factor
right,
on you. The young
right.
folks of today don't have that incident.
But
Nobody's ever spit on them.
but listen, but Micah's incident is the thing that could be the driving force to keep fighting. That's all I'm
For
saying.
her.
For Micah, though, it's not a
your
shared
thing
experience between
is,
all young people.
But that's not that's not a shared experience. So it's gonna
And that's the
do that for
biggest
Micah.
difference between back then and now. Back then, it was a shared experience. The
Awesome.
disparity, the poverty, the disrespect, the lack of access was experienced by everyone.
and
Here in
it ain't now,
2024, it's
and it
all
isn't
no,
now, Randa.
no, it's not. No, it's
The
not.
lack of access to good education, the lack of access to quality health care, the lack of access to housing. Did Myra just mention at the onset of the conversation the number of homeless people? The issues are still relevant today. It may not be as
there's a
blatant.
difference between the
It may
access
not be
to
as
good
blatant
health care
as
and the
seemingly
access
racism.
to health care. During the time we're talking about in the 60s, there was no access to health care. Now you're delineating. You're saying there's no access to good health care, which means there is access to some health care, but there's not access to a health care that we have decided is
In
of a certain level.
1963, you couldn't get Medicaid.
Care, please.
Huh?
Xenia, tell them about
1963, you couldn't get Medicaid.
Oh,
In
and even
2024, you can.
services are being cut.
yeah. I know the health department currently only has 2 clinics out of the 10 that they originally started with. And those 2 clinics are very much lacking in the care that they can give.
And you don't have to get any more specific than that, Xenia, without, but I'm just saying, just giving you an example. And there are places that, and then I'll tell you for senior citizens, comments from senior citizens, they don't drive far anymore. The services seem to be getting further and further and further and further away from home for them to access. Sure, you can boast about the services that are available in the community, but when you got to drive 30 miles or 20 miles to them versus it being within 5 miles of your home, a grocery store not in a neighborhood whereas you can go in one area of town and they have a choice of grocery stores. And you get what I'm saying? So that's why I say that there are things that are happening that we gotta keep going. And so I ask this one last question. What steps should your generation take to prepare for the next elections?
Let's start with Ms. Gonzalez.
Boy, Myra, did he call you out or what?
I would say reason. I think reason is the biggest thing, because we can say there's so many things that could motivate you to go out and vote and be very passionate about what you have to say and what you think is right for yourself. But if you have no backbone to what you believe in and nothing that keeps you to keep going, how do we motivate people to vote? How do you make people care about the environment that they live in, not just at home locally, but nationally? And it doesn't have to be traumatic. It doesn't have to be something so life-changing to the point that it ruins your life, but there has to be a reason that people care. And I think you need to know that before you just send anyone to go vote, because you can tell people to go vote all day long. But if they're voting, like they're literally just playing tic-tac-toe on the election tablet, what's the point? There's no reason for you to even be sitting in the booth. And being honest, have some sort of education before you go in there and just have reasoning to what you believe in. So yeah.
So does that mean knowing what matters to you and then finding the candidate that reflects that? Is that pretty much what you're saying, Myra? Raheem, you seem like you want to say something.
I have a question. Are we saying what's important to you, but not what's better for the community? So it's about the individual and no longer the community. Is that what we're saying?
I think it goes hand in hand. I think, you surround yourself with people who think alike, as much as we hate to admit it. You surround with people who think just like you. Maybe not in the exact same way, but you, like how we were saying, like when we started earlier about community, your community is someone who probably thinks just like you. I mean, not that you want that, but a lot of your daily life is influenced by who you surround yourself with. Even though it'd be great to communally think of solutions together and solve a lot of things that we have issues with as a community and move forward together, sometimes I think people at the end of the day just vote for themselves. So go ahead.
Anybody else? Thank you.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Micah.
I definitely think like passion is an important thing, but I also think it's as a community really promoting education. A lot of what I've seen on why people don't know what policies city council is passing, what actions they're doing, is because it's not really you have to know something is happening for you to want to look it up. So unless you're just scrolling through the city council's agenda every day, it's pretty hard to know what's going on. So actively trying to put out there what the government is doing, and making sure that people have things that they really do believe in, like Myra said, is super important. Like there are definitely things that highly influenced how I voted in the election, but some people just simply did not have that. They just were like, "Oh, it's one or the other, and I don't care for either of them. So I'm voting for the lesser of two evils." I think that's a bad way to vote. I think you should vote because you very honestly believe in something and you believe that the person you are voting for is going to do it. That is one thing I can definitely say. Like Nicholas had stuff that he believed that who he voted in was going to do. And I cannot say the same for some people I know that voted for Kamala. But yeah, I do think it's really important to know who you're voting for and to at least have reasons to vote for them.
So Xenia, by the way, do you think that this generation can influence the uprising, if you will, of a third party?
I hope so. That's my hope, because this system, like I said, it doesn't work for us. And we've seen that time and time again. I feel like personally, we keep we basically did the same thing this election that we did in 2016. I think a lot of people were in denial and were shocked with the results. But I honestly was not surprised or shocked. I predicted this was going to happen a year ago after talking to the young people and seeing how disenchanted they were with the Democratic Party. They have continued to go further and further right, and they're abandoning their base. And because of that, we do not have the numbers anymore as Democrats, I don't think, to really, really, truly continue to win, especially not the young vote, because we haven't done anything to prove to them.
If I can just kind of interject here real quick. I've been holding my tongue because I've been wanting to actually respond to Micah about something. Something that I think you should keep in mind: don't stop what you're doing. Anything worth doing, anything worth having is worth doing. 2, think of what you're doing now as an investment, right? You're not going to change the boomers' mind. They're old. They're dinosaurs. Their
Hey,
time
I
is
resent
coming.
that. I'm a
But am
boomer.
I wrong?
Look, I
But am I wrong?
resemble that comment.
Dr.
But-
I
Jones,
disagree with that statement.
But
come on, help me.
their time is coming, and the millennials are about to take over. And what we find appropriate is the thing that's going to take in effect. And then our time will come, and your generation will then decide what will take effect. Now is the time for you to invest those seeds into your generations to say, hey, this was a problem when we were children. Now we have the opportunity, now that we're in control or about to take control, to fix these issues so the younger generation behind us now don't have these problems. So I say to you, don't give up. Second thing, to Miss Zion, I don't know how to pronounce it.
Zinnia.
Zinnia, thank you. I think what happened during the Democratic election, when you said a lot of young people are going to the right, and that I also heard people say here that
No,
a
that's
lot
not
of,
what I was saying. I was saying the Democratic Party has continued to go further and further right, and that is why they're losing their base.
There are also
okay.
But there
Okay.
are
My
there
apologies.
are younger folks that are going
Well,
further.
you know what? I need to just give the young. I said this is where the knowledge, the age comes in. Historically, you could not get elected in the South unless you were a Democrat. And after Lyndon Johnson signed the Civil Rights Bill, all of those segregationist Democrats from the middle of the country, from the South, flipped to the Republican Party because they were against that Civil Rights Bill. Just understanding who these people really are. Okay? These were the same segregationists from the 60s and 50s and 40s who now are the Republican Party. Because historically, the Republican Party was looked upon of the party of Senator Brooke, who was African American, of African descent, the Rockefellers, the Bushes. That was the old Republican Party that fought for civil rights and all this other stuff.
The Republicans freed the slaves.
It changed. And the Southern Democrats are now the new Republicans. The Southern segregationist Democrats are the new Republicans. So if you look at a map, did you see the election map? You had Virginia, Maryland, you had the West Coast, and you had little spots around. And the whole rest of that map is red. That's where the Democratic Party historically was very, very strong. You couldn't get elected in the South as a governor unless you were a Democrat. Now that has completely flipped. Those segregationist Democrats are now the new Republicans. So that is why you see so many Republicans being elected through the South. So keep that in the back of your mind when you look at elected officials and you're listening to what they're saying. And when they're running, they show up when they're running for office. And I think it's imperative that the young people have a good history and documentation on what they have voted for, because it's documented, and look and see what they vote for. Does that coincide with your rights and your lifestyle? So it's important that we just don't go vote, but know what you're voting for. Everyone who's running, unless they're brand new out of the box, has never been elected. You listen again to what they are supporting. So it's very, very important that we understand the history. And what did Lyndon Johnson say when he signed the Civil Rights Bill? He said the Democrats have lost the South for generations, because he knew who he was dealing with. All those people flipped to the Republican Party. And you could see it in the way that people voted. Look at the breakdown of the vote. Women still continue to hold up the Democratic Party. African American women and Hispanic women continue.
Just think
That is true. I definitely continue.
I just personally think that you should always vote for whoever has your best interest in the forefront. I don't know if it's Democrat, Republican. Quite frankly, I don't care. I don't assign myself to any party because I always have decided, and what I was personally taught was that one, you got to look out for yourself first. You can't help somebody if you can't help yourself. I think that's what a lot of this stuff goes back to. Only until you are able to learn and educate yourself is the only time you can go educate somebody else about what's important to them. Not you, but for them as well. And I think the whole Republican, Democrat, I honestly, personally, I just think a lot of that stuff is just a scam to divide people. I think if people just go for the person who has your values to the forefront of their agenda, I think these parties will dissolve themselves and something else will come up new. But a lot of people are so conditioned to Democrat or Republican or what their side's on. Who cares what side they're on? What are their values? And does that align with what you want?
So Nicholas,
That should be it.
So as you're
Nicholas, with
saying
that said,
values,
what do you?
that's important because values to me is being honest. Values to me is not, trying to rape somebody. Values to me is not doing anything to be convicted. So as I get, we need to look at individual values, things that really make your life better and also makes the community better, no matter who they are. But that's not how America votes.
So
And
Nicholas,
what you're saying makes sense, but it's not gonna happen in my lifetime. It'll probably never happen in your lifetime. We're probably 100 years away from something like that.
So Nicholas, I
Very
want to
true.
ask you a quick question. What advice would you give to young adults who feel disconnected from politics?
If you feel disconnected from politics, you need to investigate why. I think that's the first thing. You need to go see why you don't care or you're not invested in people who are entrusted with making decisions about how, I want to say live your life, but how your immediate area or surroundings is going to affect your life.
Micah,
Because if
explain
you don't,
why. Micah,
well,
explain
I'm
why.
talking about for that. I'm just talking about for that hypothetical individual. It's different for each of us. Some people can feel like their vote don't matter. Some people may, I don't know, don't vote because they dog can't
So
vote.
they feel that the government failed them.
No one is. Well, that's a different thing. I was gonna say no one in this life is obligated to. I guess other than your parents, maybe are obligated to make you successful or feel good about it. At the end of the day, we're all responsible of a certain age to ourselves for ourselves.
And that's true.
Period.
But if the government keeps you from having clean water and access to health care, which is, in my opinion, a God-given right, you should be able to have water. You should be able to have food. You should be able to have shelter. And that not be a question amongst any party. Like those things should exist, period, for everybody.
Yeah,
because it's
100%.
So
100%.
But
do we
America
understand
doesn't
why
feel
that it
that way,
doesn't?
and America has never
understand that?
felt that way. That
We
those
understand
things
that.
should be available to everyone.
I don't think that we do.
And until we can all feel that way, the system is going to continue the way it is.
To serve the majority.
Right. So here's the thing. When you're looking at the Democratic Party versus Republican Party, the Democratic Party has a tougher role to hoe because it's trying to capture a multifaceted group. And the Republicans are just trying to capture people who want white people to stay in control. They're already united on the message.
And they're the majority.
They don't care
They're the
what
majority.
the policy is. They don't care if there's no policy. What they care is that they can maintain, one of them can maintain control. But the Democrats we can't go to our electorate with that. because we have requirements. We have things we want. We have things that we're trying to get accomplished. So
You gotta earn
therefore,
my
a
vote.
person running for a Democrat, once there was a base, a true base, the base has eroded and continues to erode with the baby boomers. The other folks are saying, you have to tell me and show me why I should vote for you. And they're standing up there saying, because I got this policy, I got this thing that I want to do. And if that thing doesn't hit on what is important to that individual, then we've lost them.
Well, as you said, the Republicans is just opposite. They have a core group of people who want the preservation of whiteness, and that's what they do.
And that's
You know, they always talk about
we
these
can't
core
ignore
groups.
the fact that that's the majority of the country. Like, I'm big at looking on
Absolutely.
the raw numbers, looking at the data, the hard facts. Like, you
That's
have to
true.
understand that 86% of African Americans voted for Kamala. There's so many of other people on the other team that it crushed us. But we don't pay attention to those kind of things. We say, they didn't do enough. It's not
Was it
working.
60? What was it? 60-something% of Caucasian males, 53% of Caucasian females who voted for him. About
Yeah,
what?
but sadly,
I don't understand. See, I don't understand logic like this because y'all act like Obama didn't happen. Obama was president. He ran twice. It's not. I think
something. Nicholas, hold on one second. I want to mention something real quick. And Myra, 67% of Hispanic women in Florida did not vote.
Why?
Because you're the voice.
You're the elected voice of Hispanic people.
I think at least
who voted and who didn't.
I think at least in my opinion, coming from a country where corruption is very, very common across all branches of government, they probably come here and think it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because at the end of the day, everyone else votes for you. So someone else will be speaking on their behalf, especially women who come from a very, I hate to say, but culturally suppressed environment. They think, women's votes don't matter because at the end of the day, the men are in charge, which is why when I do talk to Hispanic women, they say I would have never voted for Kamala if I did go to vote because a woman can't be in charge. It has to be a male-only dominant society, and that's the reality.
Well, that's enough for tonight. No, I'm teasing.
Yeah.
That's
their own opinion.
Right moment.
We're
basically what we're hearing.
Can rule.
What we're hearing is that for the Democratic Party to return to prominence, they need to find a Caucasian male who lies a lot, who is convicted for sexual assault and or maybe have felonies. That's the American image.
Look, if you want to win, not if you want to do good. Yes. If you want to win, not to do good.
Right.
Absolutely.
Clarify.
So I don't know if it's that grave, but in essence, what we're saying is the image has of the person is more important than the platform. And the Republicans understood that. Okay, so I kept hearing them talking about this is going to be the end of democracy. And then I listened to people who were talking about the school systems, and I wonder how many people even know what democracy is. So we ran on the power of not losing our democracy. We ran on a platform where she had plans, but she lost to a guy who said he had a concept of a plan. Well, do you understand that there are people who are living their lives on concepts of a plans without plans? They can relate. They bought into that. So the idea to win is to be more concerned about how to reach the individual people than the platform that you're running on, and then get the work done when you get in office.
I think it's really important to when I think about Kamala's campaign, I really do not think she had a plan. For me,
Thank you.
I saw.
Thank you.
Well, she had 90 days to do it. How
At
many
least
people you know
what-
ran a campaign in 90 days?
Yeah, but I think it's
She was
important
vice president for 4 years, man.
to be the president elect. And when she went to campaign, I mean, at first she didn't even release like what her policies were going to be, and then what she campaigned on was just basically, I'm not Donald Trump, and that simply was not enough. And she was also campaigning very hard towards people who were not her base, as in she was not campaigning for young people because she already knew that what young people wanted.
Explain that. Well, break that down for me, because it's break that down for me.
The-
How was she not campaigning for young people?
So what young people wanted first, well, what a lot of young people wanted.
No. Break down
was
how she
a
wasn't
free Palestine.
campaigning for young
What-
people.
You
Not
know
what
what?
young people
I'm
wanted.
going to say something here that you may
was-
not like, okay? I'm tired of this Palestine situation. The reason being, when black people are out there getting their heads whacked in, you heard anybody
From
protesting?
Palestine coming over here to help.
Not
And
one.
historically,
Not one.
there's
And
never
the African
been
American community has
anyone,
to
any
wake up.
entity to stop genocide. It's never ever happened in the history of human race.
Yes,
If
there has not been
no, it hasn't.
anyone
If an
to-
individual decides to commit genocide, it's always happened. No one's ever stopped
They're
genocide
only
from
held
happening.
accountable after the genocide has been
That is correct.
completed.
But
Show
no,
me historical
That's
evidence
not
of
what we were
someone
saying, but
stopping
we can't get
genocide.
it.
It's never
We
happened.
can't get anything out because the men are definitely dominating this conversation right now. And so, in order for us to get out what she's trying to say, she's got to be able to finish her thought.
Sure.
So what I was saying was that Kamala knew that young people wanted a free Palestine. I know that older people may not put as much of a value on Palestine, but you do have to understand where we're coming from in terms of we're seeing people die on camera, like in the most brutal ways. You see it on Instagram, you see it on Reddit. For a long time, you saw it on TikTok. It was everywhere. You have to see people die on camera, and
All trusted sites.
your tax dollars go towards this. That your government officials sponsor this, that they get their money from AIPAC, the American Israeli whatever it's called, which is basically a foreign entity controlling our government. You're told all of this, and you're presented a president-elect whose husband has actively campaigned for Israel, who has gotten an insane amount of money from AIPAC, like some of the most in like American history, and has tried very hard to avoid the conversation, and is also already a part of an administration that actively gives weapons to Israel. When I went to city council, some of the things I heard about how children have died is ridiculous. A 3-year-old was crushed by an aid package from the UAE. There are people who get their limbs blown off and then cannot receive medical care, who are burned alive while they are actually getting medical care.
Okay. I'm going to stop you there. Tell me how that is going to change now. Tell me what specific thing that will happen that will stop all of that right now.
What would stop it is us refusing to give aid to Israel.
Oh, no.
That's impossible. That's impossible.
That's not what I'm saying.
It's not impossible
What
for us
right
to stop
now can
Israel.
happen to stop that. We're not, we, as you said, we can't go up there and say, don't give them money. You think they're going to listen? No. You have to put a government in place that could potentially listen.
But
if
they're
you
already-
have a
but
government in place
what-
that will never listen.
Neither one of them were going to listen. They
Yeah,
made that very clear from day one.
Neither one of them
Neither one of them were going to
listen. And I'm not
Then you
voting
come back in the camera so that it'll look like Michael's
So
not.
people can hear your voice.
So the alternative
Show that
then
beautiful
is
face.
vote. I'm just
Stop
trying
on
to
it.
get some perspective from you guys as to your age group. You don't like what they're doing. Both people are going to give, the weapons one way or the other.
Mhm.
I mean, and the country that's got the weapons has a long history of doing things. When South Africa, remember when everybody boycotted South Africa, not
Mm-hmm.
sell them weapons? Where do you think they got the weapons from? Israel.
But
Yeah,
that's our
no.
point. That's our
And
point. That
So
neither one of
this
those
has
parties.
been going on for millennia.
Yes, but
So
that doesn't mean we have to
how do we
continue to
stop
vote
it?
for it, though.
This
How do
Yeah,
we stop it?
I think that's what
So
Michael was saying. That's why Micah is seemingly strong about a third
How
party.
do
And
we
here's where I
stop
come in. Here's where I come in. It's 5 minutes to 8. We've gone 25 minutes
way,
beyond
way
time.
over? But I
And
still want
so
to know
I
how
don't
do
want
we.
to. Wait a
Well, I
minute,
was
Dr.
having
What to
fun.
say? I
Wait a
ain't
minute,
even get
wait a
to.
minute, wait a minute,
I ain't
wait a
get to
minute,
go off
wait a minute,
yet.
wait a minute, wait a minute.
That's
We're
right.
wrapping
You
it
haven't
up.
spoken yet.
We're wrapping it up, but I'm gonna tell you what we're gonna do in the wrap up. So we're wrapping it up. Obviously, if I'm listening to my Dr. Kane voice in my left ear, this is why we need to bring young folk on more often. And Tyrone, I get it from both sides, right?
That's right.
However,
I love how he has his own little cue.
let me see, Tyrone. What were we referred to as old and decrepit?
Randall didn't make a statement yet.
I
Old
think,
and decrepit. So the one thing
I think I
we
said
always like to give our guests an
dinosaur.
opportunity. We like to give our guests an opportunity to share their final thoughts about things that we have discussed, and to now share what you have not had a chance to say. So as we near the end of this discussion, and thank you all so much for the hearty conversation,
I love the discussion. I really loved it.
we
It's
would
all
like
love.
to
Hear
It's all
wrap
love.
what
this.
the young people have to say, but I want to know, what are we going to do about it? How
So
do we-
as we wrap up, answer that question in Dr. Jones in your final thoughts as we near this what was supposed to be a 1 hour discussion now is at the 1.5 hour mark, because we really want to respect your time as well as our audience and not take up any more of your evening, because we only asked you to be on for an hour. So out of respect for you all, because you certainly can come back if you leave it up to Dr. Kane and Tyrone, we'll have you
Amen.
all.
You know we're
Hey,
gonna have them
we
back.
go to the end of the conversation, baby.
So
Man,
I'm gonna give
this light work for us. This light
gonna
work.
give,
It's
I'm
advertising.
gonna start with Randall, and then I'm gonna go to Myra, and then I'm gonna go to Nicholas, and I'm gonna let Xenia and Micah close us out as our guests for tonight. But Randall, share your final thoughts for tonight, things that you didn't get a chance to say or regarding our topic for discussion.
Final thoughts. First and foremost, it's always all love. It's all in the betterment of making each individual person a better individual. Um, I love Micah's attitude, everything that she's bringing to the table, her outlook, everything. I appreciate Myra, being, fighting for that American citizenship, because I know it's a fight. Appreciate Nicholas for
It is.
his alternative views that keep you grounded. Always thankful for my
Always,
dad.
baby.
Dr. Jones, I think we're seeing a lot of the same things. Miss Jocelyn Turner, you're in that category with my dad. But ultimately, since there's so much to say, I think the best thing that anyone can always do, I found out because I did it this year, is read a book a month. Reading allows you to learn more in depth. Once you learn more in depth, you get to renew your thoughts and make better decisions. And that's just the best thing anyone can do at every given moment. So my final thoughts, because I don't have enough time to say what I want to say, is let's read more. Try to get a book a month in.
Thank you, Randall. Thank you so much. Myra, what are your final thoughts? Unmute yourself, Myra.
Sorry, I'm muted. I say keep the energy. I think we keep the energy going because we're passionate and we care about these things, but keep it in your friend groups, keep it in your community, keep it everywhere you go with you. Always keep this energy going. It is what lights people up, truly. So yeah, that's my final thoughts.
That's so true, Myra. Thank you. That is so true. Come on, I want Raheem. I don't want Nicholas.
Oh, you don't want Raheem. You better stay with Nicholas.
You better stay with Nicholas, huh?
You stay with Nicholas.
So I want to say, Micah, you are the future. I respect that you are out there in your community already pushing the envelope for your generation and what's important to you. So please don't lose that. It is more important than you know right now. Second thing, I would encourage everyone. Obviously, I'm a very pour from your cup when your cup is full person. So always take care of your first, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, physically. You have to take care of yourself. You cannot pour from an empty cup. The third thing I want to say is if you really want to find out why people do the things they do or the way they think, go out and volunteer. My uncle Tyrone, I talked to him about this. I do a fire mentorship thing, which I got a application to be the squad leader. But anyway, and so now I go out into the community and I'm a part of all these events and things like that. And I meet all these new people, black, white, men, women, transgender, all sorts of people who I'm practically neighbors with. The more you interact with the community around you, the more you see and understand what's important, not just to you at that point, but to everyone else around you. And it may shape your opinion about how you approach something or how you may need to rethink something. And that gives you also a chance to maybe challenge their thoughts and opinions and have them rethink something from a different perspective. And so I just want to leave here with that. And that's my final thoughts. And thank you so much for inviting me. I've always wanted to do stuff like this. I love watching The Cut and The Wire where people sit in a circle and they talk. So this was fun. I'll see if I can join some other time in the future.
I appreciate that, and thank you.
We're definitely going to have the young people back. Definitely.
Yes, for sure, for sure. So Zinnia, I'm gonna let you go first because I think we've decided we want Michael to go last.
She said I can't.
There we.
My hopes, and this is what I'm encouraging my kids to do, is to continue to make the change that they want to see in the world. And if we say that to our kids, we have to back them when they do it. Mm-hmm. We can't do it this way, or it's not the right way. Mm-hmm. So I've encouraged my kids to do that. So I'm gonna back her 100% with the decisions she makes, and she's always going to make informed decisions because around here we like to read. So I think it's important that we gather as many of these young folks and bring them into community because that's what they're looking for. They want community, and I don't think currently we're showing them that. That's it.
Yeah, I think we need more. We need Micah and some of her friends to come on without the. Yeah, go ahead, Micah. The floor is yours.
Well, I thank all of you for all your opinions and getting to hear all of the opinions. I don't talk to people older than me much often, besides my grandfather. He's a very opinionated man. But I'd say to everyone out there to just let your values drive you. Let your values determine who you vote for, and make sure that you aren't compromising those values because you believe that you have no other choice. Because I believe there's always a choice. I'd like to end by saying Free Palestine, as always, and
the Congo, and Haiti.
And Haiti.
I said it. I already said it.
Yep.
And Haiti.
And thanking my mother for being the one to shout at cops for me when I got arrested, and hoping that the rest of you all support the young people in your lives and make sure they have someone there for them if they get arrested. Yeah.
I don't know about you all, but I'm voting for Micah. We gonna all remember that. We're gonna all write in Micah Blunt. You know, right in line, Micah Blunt. Dr. Jones, what are your final thoughts for tonight?
I just
Depending
feel
on her
that
policies.
we have a future when we have young people like this that are thinking through. But at the same time, if there are causes that we want to pursue, take a basic one like education. You realize that's the cornerstone to everything we achieve as a community. And I think what's going on now, I'm leaving it up to the young people to get out there and demand better quality education for our children. I mean, there's a lot of things going on in the world, but right here at home, look at who you vote for city council, for city council at large. Look at who you send to the state house. Those are things we have to start doing. Keep it local, because remember, national elections come along maybe every 4 years. Every four, we know them. Senate elections every 6 years. So those are things we have to keep up with and put people there who you have researched and who you think will represent you well. And
Thank
not
you,
just vote because of the party they're in.
Thank you, Dr. Jones. Tyrone, what are your final thoughts?
Well,
He ain't got no thought.
First of all, I want to thank all of the young folks for coming on. It was truly a pleasure to not only have you on, but to hear your thoughts and your ideas. It's interesting how even in a mutual discord, things can be learned, and that's what I appreciate for this year. Now, I'm going to lead off with the things that are passionate from me that I've heard others mention, and that is that as a group, and I'm speaking primarily to minority groups of all sizes, we have to band together to reverse educate those who miss education. All right, so we've talked about in many of our instances here how education and the power of education. We heard Ms. Zenia talk about the power of reading. We heard Randall mention that he's reading a book. Well, we have to find a way to get our collective groups behind the concept of a better education. Because what we're talking about and the length of time it takes to power it can only truly be made by an educated electorate. All right, then. So what I'm saying is we have to start teaching the young with the requirement that they go home and pass the information on to their parents who didn't get it. Without that, we will always have them in opposition to an age group that is not theirs. The truth and the power in the change that we want is in the education of our people. Now, I'm not talking formal. I'm not talking about school, even though that's necessary. I'm not talking about college, even though that's necessary. What we did tonight was education, conversation, engaging with individuals of different ages, different opinions, in order to gain a better understanding. That right there is the type of education that I feel we need to move the needle forward.
Thank you, Tyrone. Thank you, Dr. Jones. Thank you to all of our guests. And thank you all for joining us on today's episode of Pause for the Truth, where we explored young adults' reactions to the election and the role they play in shaping our future. We heard powerful reflections on the importance of staying informed, engaged, and united around key issues that matter to our generation. As we move forward, it's clear that young voices are more important than ever in driving change. Let's continue these conversations, take action, and ensure our voices are heard, not just during elections, but every day. Until next time, stay empowered and keep pushing for the future you want to see. And of course, keep tuning in every Tuesday to Pause for the Truth. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Drop us a line and tell us what you'd like for us to discuss in the future. We are definitely open for ideas and suggestions and recommendations. And we miss Dr. Kane being here tonight. As I mentioned at the onset, he was under the weather. We pray that he is doing well. Thank you all for tuning in. And to our guests, don't hang up. Stay on. Good evening.
And there we have it, another episode of the Pause for the Truth podcast in the proverbial books. Our heartfelt thanks go out to every one of you who took the time to tune in. Mark your calendars. We're here every Tuesday at 6:30 Eastern Standard Time. Feel free to join our community on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. But the golden ticket? Subscribing to our YouTube channel. That's your passport to all our latest episodes and exclusive content. A special mention to the wizard behind the curtain, Tyrone Jackson from Call Tyrone IT Services. His technical prowess and unwavering dedication are the backbone of this podcast. Next week, we'll be back with more. Until then, tell your friends, tell your family about our show. Your support is invaluable. And remember,